Barbershop, funny thing about a barbershop, especially a black barbershop.
A comedy film with just a $12 million budget ended up igniting a political storm across America. One single line turned Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King into a joke on screen. The press dissected it. The public clashed fiercely. Voices of do not support spread everywhere. Barbershop 2002 was no longer just a lighthearted story inside a neighborhood barbershop. At the center of the storm was Ice Cube. He wasn't just Calvin, he was the hidden architect behind every decision. He was the one who stood firm, refusing to cut the shocking scene. And that choice turned Barbershop from a small film into a cultural explosion that shook the nation. But what was the truth behind that blast? Looking back at Ice Cube's beginnings is a story that moves you to sorrow, yet pulls you into understanding. Before he became an icon, Ice Cube was O'Shea Jackson, born June 15, 1969, in South Central Los Angeles. He grew up in Compton, known through the 70s and 80s as California's crime capital, a place where gunfire rang louder than alarm clocks, where racial injustice was etched into every block. For many young black kids, the path seemed already written: join a gang or die young. His father, Hosea Jackson, worked as a groundskeeper at UCLA. Strict, disciplined, quiet. His mother, Doris, was a hospital clerk. They raised their children on modest paychecks, doing everything to shield them from crime, but the streets were always waiting outside. By 12, O'Shea had already seen friends fall to drugs and gunfire. Those images burned into his mind. They left him with rage against society and a burning hunger to escape the iron cage of Compton. Music gave him a way out. At 14, he began writing lyrics, raw but blazing with fire. His words told of injustice, violence, the despair of black life. His very first rap was written for a friend murdered in a street shooting. Back then, Cube had no idea those rough notes in a school notebook would one day make him the voice of defiance for a generation. At school, Cube wasn't the reckless bad boy people might picture. He studied hard. He was talented at architectural drawing. At one point, he even dreamed of becoming an architect. But Compton's chaos and inequality pulled him back into rap. Every line he wrote wasn't just anger on paper, it was a cry for an abandoned community. The bloody streets of Compton forged Ice Cube into a man who refused to bow. From a poor kid, he rose carrying a fire of resistance. And soon, he found the one weapon powerful enough to make America listen: music. Ice Cube, from rebel rapper to the boss of Barbershop. When people talk about Ice Cube, they cannot ignore NWA, the legendary rap group that shook America in the late 1980s. From the violent streets of Compton, Cube, alongside Dr. Dre, Easy, EMC Ren, and DJ Yella, used rap to expose the harsh realities of black life, poverty, drugs, and police brutality. Tracks like Straight Outta Compton and F the Police were not just music, they were the roar of a generation pushed to the edge. The US government branded them public enemy number one. The FBI sent warning letters. Radio stations refused to play their songs. Newspapers splashed them across headlines. But for young black audiences, Ice Cube and NWA were heroes. They dared to say what society tried to hide. Cube's lyrics were sharp as knives, raw and unflinching, making him the rebellious soul of the group. That same rebellious streak forced Cube to leave the group over contract disputes. He stepped out on his own and cemented his image as America's most dangerous gangsta rapper with albums like America's Most Wanted and Death Certificate. In the 1990s, Ice Cube on stage was pure rage, a man shouting at the system with fire in his voice. In the early 2000s, audiences were stunned to see Cube in a completely different role. Instead of a rapper spitting fire into the mic, he became Calvin Palmer Jr., a soft-spoken barbershop owner in Chicago's South Side, struggling to keep his family's shop from being sold. It was a twist that left Hollywood surprised. The same man who once shouted "fuck the police" was now behind a barber's chair, listening to customers laugh, argue, and talk about life. From a gangsta who confronted police, Cube transformed into a figure of maturity, community, and responsibility, a man looking out for his family and the next generation. Some rap fans doubted it. Ice Cube gentle? No way. But it was that very impossible shift that made Barbershop a success. The vision: Barbershop as a street parliament. In African American culture, the barbershop is not just a place for a haircut. It is a social hub, a gathering place where people talk, debate, let off steam, even discuss politics. Some scholars call it the street parliament, because in those barber chairs with scissors clicking in the background, everything is on the table. From last night's NBA game to rising gas prices to racial injustice to the role of black leadership. Ice Cube understood this better than anyone. He grew up in Compton, where every barbershop felt like a doorway to the real world, raw, noisy, full of laughter mixed with curse words. So when the barbershop script landed on his desk, Cube did not just see a comedy. He saw a chance to bring the voice of the community onto the big screen. Ice Cube's unexpected path to Barbershop. The script for Barbershop was written by screenwriter Don D. Scott and caught the attention of MGM. At first, studios were doubtful. A movie about a barbershop, who would watch that? But when it came time to cast the lead, Ice Cube was at the top of the list. By then, Cube had already made his mark in film with Boys in the Hood 1991, Friday 1995, and Next Friday 2000. He had proven he was more than just a rapper. He could act, and he could tell everyday stories. That credibility convinced MGM to take the risk and offer Cube the role. At first, Cube hesitated. He worried that playing Calvin, a mild-mannered barbershop owner, might clash with the gangsta rapper image that had defined him for years. But the more he read the script, the more he saw that Calvin was not just a man cutting hair, he was a symbol of the black community. A man carrying the weight of family legacy, struggling to hold on to identity in the face of urban change and poverty. Calvin represented millions of African Americans in real life. But Cube was not just an actor, he had even greater power behind the scenes. The real power of Ice Cube. Behind the camera, Ice Cube did not stop at taking the lead role. Through his company Cube Vision, he also signed on as producer. He gave feedback on the script, adding everyday details drawn from his own experience. Cube wanted the film's atmosphere to feel so authentic that black audiences would walk out of the theater nodding, "Yeah, that's exactly how our barbershops are." He worked with director Tim Story to shape the scenes so that the characters were not just cracking jokes, but engaging in passionate debates, sometimes even heated arguments, just like a real street parliament. Many scenes were encouraged to include improvisation to capture the raw energy and authenticity of the barbershop. Hollywood was skeptical at first, but Cube stood his ground. He believed that from this small setting, Barbershop could reflect the larger story of American society. And he was right. When the film finally premiered, what unfolded in that little barbershop did more than make people laugh. It sparked conversations in the real world, just as Cube had intended. The surprising success of Barbershop 2002. When Barbershop hit theaters in September 2002, no one expected that a modest comedy about a neighborhood barbershop would become a box office phenomenon. With a budget of only $12 million, the film grossed more than $75 million in the US alone, a staggering figure for an urban comedy, a genre Hollywood often dismissed. The film was not only a financial triumph, but also a critical success. Critics called it an everyday story that cut straight to the heart of American society. Barbershop played like a love letter to the black community, funny, heartfelt, and grounded in real life. Its success went far beyond laughter. Barbershop launched a franchise that would continue for over a decade. Barbershop 2. Back in Business 2004 pulled in another $65 million. Beauty Shop 2005 spun off with Queen Latifah. And in Barbershop, The Next Cut 2016, Cube returned, this time confronting the issue of gun violence, proving the series was still deeply connected to real-world struggles. Cube's determination turned what could have been dismissed as a small film for a small community into a cultural landmark, a franchise that lasted for years and left a lasting imprint on American cinema. But the glow of box office success in 2002 would not last long. Right after the laughs and applause, Barbershop lit the fuse on a political storm. Lines that seemed harmless suddenly turned the movie into a lightning rod of outrage, thrusting Ice Cube and the entire crew straight into the eye of controversy. Behind-the-scenes tension, the Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King controversy. In 2002, Barbershop, the comedy produced by Ice Cube, was expected to be nothing more than lighthearted entertainment capturing the lively conversations inside a barbershop in Chicago. But the moment it hit theaters, a single line of dialogue ignited one of Hollywood's biggest controversies of the time. In one scene, the character Eddie, played by Cedric the Entertainer, drops a joke: "Rosa Parks ain't do nothing but sit down." And it did not stop there. Eddie even brought Martin Luther King Jr. into the conversation, leaving many viewers stunned. For the black community, these names are not simply historical figures. They are sacred symbols, the lifeblood of an entire civil rights movement. To turn them into a punchline for many was no different than erasing the pain and memory of a people. The outrage spread quickly. Jesse Jackson, the famous civil rights activist, spoke out fiercely, "We cannot allow Hollywood to diminish the legacy of those who changed America just for a laugh." Al Sharpton, one of the loudest voices in the community, held a press conference condemning the film as insensitive and disrespectful to history. The family of Rosa Parks reacted sharply, calling the line an insult to the woman who dared to sit on that fateful bus in 1955, sparking the entire civil rights movement. The family of Martin Luther King Jr. also expressed outrage, declaring that King's name should never be reduced to a punchline. Public pressure reached a boiling point. Community groups demanded that MGM cut the scene from all DVD and VHS releases, along with a public apology to the Parks and King families. The media joins the battle. This was no longer just about a movie, it became a political and cultural flashpoint. The Chicago Tribune ran a headline, "A laugh or an insult?" The New York Times asked the question, "How far should artists go when touching collective memory?" On talk shows from CNN to BT, the hot topic was, did Barbershop disrespect Rosa Parks? Some columnists even drew comparisons. If someone made a joke out of Abraham Lincoln, would white America accept it? That turned the incident into a deep racial and cultural debate. While the public waited for an apology, MGM and Ice Cube chose to stand their ground. MGM and Ice Cube. The shocking refusal. They released a statement. The barbershop is a place where every opinion, right or wrong, can be voiced and challenged. The film reflects that reality. It was never meant to offend. Ice Cube went even further in an interview. "If we cut that scene, we're admitting that black people can't debate their own history. Barbershop is a place where people are free to speak the truth even if the opinion is shocking." That declaration poured gasoline on the fire. Some praised Ice Cube for bravely defending creative freedom. Others saw it as arrogance, using the label of art to dismiss the sacrifices of civil rights heroes. A battle between two sides. The supporters argued that the film only reflected reality. In real life, many young people look at history in a shallow or irreverent way. Including that in the film gave audiences a chance to push back, not to demean. The critics insisted that a movie with such influence on popular culture carried responsibility. Figures like Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King Jr. should be protected as untouchable icons. The controversy dragged on for months, expanding far beyond cinema, turning into a cultural war between two worldviews. Should art have absolute freedom, or must art respect history and collective memory? Despite the backlash, Barbershop was a box office success and later grew into a multi-film franchise. But the scandal left a permanent wrinkle in Hollywood's history. It proved that even a single line of dialogue could strike the rawest nerve of an entire people. And it set a precedent. After Barbershop, filmmakers had to think carefully whenever they touched historical figures or cultural memory. Barbershop was no longer just a movie. It became a symbolic battlefield, forcing Hollywood to confront the ultimate question: where does creative freedom end? And when history is at stake, does art still have the right to laugh? Ice Cube turned scandal into free PR. When the public cried out for the scene to be cut and the press dissected every detail, many believed Barbershop would collapse under the weight of outrage. But Ice Cube never flinched. He realized one important truth: the more criticism the film received, the more attention it got. The reverse effect at the box office. The louder the protests, the more curious audiences became. People flocked to theaters just to see what the offensive scene was. Many who had no intention of watching Barbershop bought tickets out of sheer curiosity. The result was staggering. With a modest $12 million budget, the film grossed over $75 million, a smash hit no traditional marketing campaign could have delivered. From scandal to franchise, what made it even more remarkable was Cube's refusal to shy away from controversy in the sequels. Barbershop 2 2004 and The Next Cut 2016 carried the same street parliament spirit, diving head-on into tough issues like gun violence, politics, and inequality. That boldness ensured Barbershop was never forgotten like so many comedies of its era. Instead, it became a cultural franchise with staying power. But the bright lights of the theater told only half the story. Behind the laughter, the heated debates, and the massive box office returns, Barbershop carried secrets few people knew, behind-the-scenes details that were both fascinating and controversial, adding layers to the film's legend. Little-known secrets of Barbershop. Ice Cube nearly walked away from the role of his life. Few people know that before Barbershop began filming, Ice Cube stood at a crossroads. To the public, he was still the defiant gangsta rapper who shocked America with songs that took aim at the system. Now he was being asked to play a gentle, family-loving barbershop owner. Cube looked at the script and scoffed, "If I take this role, my toughness will be buried." He considered rejecting it many times, fearing fans would see him as soft as someone betraying his rebellious image. But after many sleepless nights, Cube changed his mind. He accepted the role of Calvin, and that gamble transformed his entire career. From a rebel challenging society, Ice Cube reinvented himself as a man of maturity, carrying the voice of a community on his shoulders. Isaac, the divisive character that split Hollywood. In a film centered on a black barbershop, a cultural symbol of the African-American community, the introduction of Isaac, a white barber, was like tossing a match into a gasoline tank. At first, he was seen as comic relief, a small twist of humor and difference. But soon, Isaac became the center of debate. One side praised his presence as a sign of openness, proof that the barbershop was not a closed world, but wide enough to include different voices. The other side was furious, accusing Hollywood of cultural appropriation, placing a white character inside a sacred black space just for laughs, turning identity into entertainment. A minor character, yet Isaac left a fault line that lingered for years. Was Barbershop a model of diversity and harmony, or just another example of Hollywood exploiting black culture to sell tickets? Even today, that question remains unanswered. Improv, the secret weapon of Barbershop. Most audiences believed that the shocking lines in Barbershop were tricks carefully written into the script. But the truth was far more dramatic. Director Tim Story did something almost unheard of in Hollywood. He loosened the reins and gave the cast full freedom to improvise on set. Cedric the Entertainer, Eve Anthony Anderson. They weren't just reciting lines, they were living inside each scene. They argued, roasted each other, even cursed, just like in a real barbershop. That raw, unpolished energy created an irresistible authenticity. Viewers felt like they were overhearing real conversations, not watching scripted performances. And it was in that atmosphere of explosive freedom that Eddie delivered the jab at Rosa Parks. No warning, no polished setup, just a blunt, unscripted line. But it struck like lightning, shocking America because it felt so real, so completely uncensored. Women, the silenced voices in the barbershop. The presence of Eve as Terry added color to the film, but many critics saw something troubling. Women in Barbershop were too marginalized. Terry was boxed into the stereotype of the angry black woman, jealous, short-tempered, reactive, but rarely given agency or control. Inside the so-called street parliament, where men debated politics, culture, and community issues, women were more like spectators on the sidelines. Their voices were muted, reflecting a gender gap that Hollywood at the time often ignored. This flaw later made Barbershop a case study in film analysis, dissected through the lens of feminist criticism. And this was the second layer of Barbershop. It was not just a community comedy. It was a mirror reflecting the complexity of American society, where men and women, black and white, free speech, and social responsibility constantly clashed. Ice Cube. The man who once almost walked away from the role turned those flaws and controversies into fuel that made Barbershop explode and endure like a cultural bomb. But the story did not end there. Behind the bright lights, Barbershop still hid another secret. Rap beef with Common, and the unexpected handshake in Barbershop. Few people know that before sharing the screen inside a barbershop, Ice Cube and Common were once bitter enemies in the rap world. In 1994, Common released the track I Used to Love HER, which many interpreted as a swipe at gangsta rap, the very style that Ice Cube and NWA had taken to the top. Furious Cube fired back with Westside Slaughterhouse, while his group Westside Connection openly dissed Common on stage. The tension quickly escalated into a full-blown rap beef. Fans split into camps. Some supported Common for daring to criticize violent rap, while others rallied behind Cube, the defender of West Coast pride. At one point, the media speculated the feud could spill into real-life violence since neither side was backing down. But fate had a different script. Years later, when Barbershop: The Next Cut 2016 went into production, Ice Cube, now the producer and star, made a move no one expected. He invited Common to join the cast. From rivals, Common became part of the on-screen street parliament, even sharing direct dialogue with Cube. Their reconciliation went further. The two teamed up to write and perform the film's theme song, Real People. It was more than just a promotional track. It was a statement of peace. Two rappers who once fired lyrical shots at each other now stood together at the same microphone telling stories about community and real life. Audiences were surprised. The rap world was shocked. The media called it one of the biggest plot twists in hip-hop of the 2010s, a decades-long feud ending inside a barbershop. Barbershop not only resolved conflicts on screen, it achieved something few thought possible in real life, transforming Ice Cube and Common from enemies into allies, linking their cultural legacies once again on the big screen. Ice Cube. Legacy. After Barbershop. His life. Today, and his massive fortune. When Barbershop 2002 exploded in success, Hollywood was forced to see Ice Cube in a different light. He was no longer just the rebel from NWA screaming against the police and the system. He was no longer just the gangsta rapper with the cold stare on stage. Barbershop transformed Cube into a multifaceted cultural figure, a singer, an actor, a producer, and above all, a man who could ignite political debates on the big screen, from barbershop to blockbuster franchises. After the success of Barbershop, Cube proved his incredible versatility. He took on family-friendly projects like Are We There Yet 2005 and Are We Done Yet 2007. Light comedies that presented him as a clumsy but lovable dad to younger audiences. These films may not have sparked controversy like Barbershop, but they introduced Cube to a new generation of fans and pushed his name far beyond the hip-hop community. Next came Ride Along 2014 and Ride Along 2 2016 action comedies, co-starring Kevin Hart. Though critics dismissed them as formulaic, both films dominated the box office, earning hundreds of millions of dollars. Cube proved he could do more than stir debate. He could also generate massive profits from commercial projects. This gave his career two distinct sides. On one hand, he was the cultural artist with socially charged works like Barbershop and Boys in the Hood. On the other, he was the box office star delivering hits through family comedies and action films. That balance allowed Cube to endure in Hollywood, where many other rappers turned actors burned bright but faded quickly. Barbershop, a legacy beyond cinema. Among Cube's many projects, Barbershop remains the golden milestone. It proved that Ice Cube was not only an actor, but also a producer with vision and cultural influence. Barbershop was never just a comedy set in a barbershop. It was a street parliament, a place where every political, social, and cultural issue could be debated, from Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King to everyday struggles. Through the film, Cube asked, "Who gets to tell the story? Who gets to be heard?" 2 decades later, Barbershop is still studied in film culture and political courses. It stands as a classic example of how a mid-budget comedy can trigger a cultural earthquake, pulling the media, activists, and audiences into an endless debate. And Ice Cube, by refusing to cut the controversial scene, carved his name into history as the man who turned scandal into legacy. Life today, from gangsta to family man. Away from Hollywood's spotlight, Ice Cube lives a remarkably private family life. He married Kimberly Woodruff in 1992, one of the rare, long-lasting marriages in the rap world. They have 4 children, including O'Shea Jackson Jr., who followed in his father's footsteps and earned acclaim for playing Ice Cube in Straight Outta Compton 2015. Cube often describes his family as his stronghold, the reason he has stayed grounded through decades of storms in the entertainment industry. He has managed to avoid major personal scandals, which is rare for someone who came from gangsta rap, a world often surrounded by violence and controversy. Beyond entertainment, Cube is also known for his outspoken politics. He has never shied away from criticizing the system, speaking out on issues facing the black community, and even stirred controversy by meeting with both Republicans and Democrats to discuss an economic plan for African Americans. For Cube, politics is part of culture, and silence, in his words, is betrayal. Wealth, the empire of a rapper turned mogul. From a boy in Compton growing up in violence, Ice Cube has built an empire of wealth that is nothing short of remarkable. According to recent estimates, Cube's net worth ranges from $160 to $180 million, with some sources placing it close to $200 million. His income does not just come from film and music. It also flows from producing, investing, and the Big G3 basketball league, the 3-on-3 competition Cube co-founded. That project transformed him from an entertainer into a legitimate sports mogul, expanding both his image and his fortune. He also owns several luxurious properties in Los Angeles, along with an impressive collection of high-end cars. Yet unlike many rappers, Cube rarely flaunts his wealth. He chooses a more private lifestyle focused on work and family. The legacy of a multifaceted icon. Today, when people think of Ice Cube, they remember many sides of him: the rebel rapper, the box office star, the powerful producer, the businessman, and the devoted husband and father. Barbershop was the cornerstone that helped Cube build that towering legacy. It proved that a modest comedy could spark a national political conversation. It showed that a gangsta rapper could transform into a mature cultural icon. And it opened the door for Cube to step out of the narrow hip-hop artist label and become an influential figure across American society. From a boy in Compton, Ice Cube traveled a long road to become an entertainment mogul worth hundreds of millions of dollars. But the greatest value he left behind was not just measured in numbers. It was his ability to turn laughter into a weapon, to turn controversy into legacy, and to transform an ordinary barbershop into a cultural bomb called Barbershop. Barbershop was never just a comedy. It was a social bomb waiting to explode, pulling America into endless debate. Ice Cube was never just playing the role of a barbershop owner for laughs. He cut deep into history, legacy, and the boundaries of free speech, turning an everyday story into a cultural symbol. And here is the untold truth: without Ice Cube's determination and boldness, Barbershop might have been trimmed down into a harmless little comedy instead of becoming the cultural explosion that shook Hollywood.